gleeful abandon. Meanwhile, Earth was crumbling all around you. You've got simultaneous epidemics of obesity and starvation. Explain that one. Bees and butterflies start to disappear. The glaciers melt. Algae blooms all around you. The coal mine canaries are dropping dead, and you won't take the hint. In every moment, there is the possibility of a better future, but you people won't believe it. And because you won't believe it, you won't do what is necessary to make it a reality. So you dwell on this terrible future and you resign yourselves to it. For one reason, because that future doesn't ask anything of you today. Because that future doesn't ask anything of you today. Yes, you saw the iceberg, warned the Titanic. But you will just steer for it anyway, full steam ahead. Why? Because you want to sink. You gave up.
Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the number one listener-supported radio station on the planet. Not giving up. Revolution Radio. Radio.
Need a midday break? Join Mona Riddler, Revolution Radio's very own Feral Hippie. Noon, weekdays on Studio B. She will bring to you a wealth of knowledge on nature to the occult with passion-filled rants. Also bringing along special guests that show the truth of what is hidden at the end of the rainbow. Don't miss this ongoing adventures of a feral hippie.
I want to tell you how it's gonna be. You're gonna give your love to me.
Welcome to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. It's Saturday, 4 p.m. Eastern, and you're listening to Starseed Awakening Radio. And here's your host, Miesha Johnston.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining Starseed Awakening Radio. And I have two guests today. Actually, last week I had Janet Lessing, who told her an amazing experience story from everything from ET contact to the MyLab and MK Ultra and everything, and then including which we're going to be starting out with a interesting fact where I pointed out to her, and actually I think she's also had other people point out to her, that her story that she shares and has shared for years has now been put in a movie, and that movie is Gemini Ascending. So she's going to start it out with where she was finishing it up last week. Last week she was sharing about the story, and she'll just kind of give you a little bit about the story again. But if you want the whole story, you can always check on and listen to that other show, which is in my YouTube channel as well as on my website, which is starseedawakening.org. Now, also, I wanted to tell you about our group here in Las Vegas. We have Starseed Awakening, which is the first and the third Friday of every month. For experiencers and for contactees. We also have people who are MK Ultra and my labs here as well. I also have a psychic development group, which is on the 2nd. And I have Star Watches, which we're having a CE5 eclipse, lunar eclipse, and blood moon group this weekend. So for anybody who's local, please come to the Starseed Awakening and Psychic Awareness meetup site, and you will see the information of where we're going to be going to. We're going to be at the Sunrise Trails is where we're actually going to go and have our CE5. Also, throughout every week, I have Starseed Awakening Google Hangout groups, which you can find the information on my Starseed Awakening Facebook. That's Starseed Awakening and ET Experience, Contact Experience. That's on Facebook, so you can go there and find the events. Those are every Sunday, like tomorrow. I have it at 11:30 to 2 o'clock. So come and join in and share with other experiencers. Also, my guests are here, come to the group from time to time too when they can. So also I have the MK Ultra Mind Control, Monarch, Montauk, Super Soldier, Target Individual, and Ritual Abuse Group, which is every Thursday at 1 to 5. And that is also on Google Hangout. You can join the MK Ultra group through the Facebook as well. It's MK Ultra with all of those things I mentioned, and that's how you can find it. So at any time you want to just check out and you don't remember those things, go to starseedawakening.org and go to my services, and you can click right over to it. So I just wanted to also say that Revolution Radio is completely listener supported, so please donate what you can and buy those seed packets, and there's other things that you can do. So keep Revolution Radio going. And now I'd like to tell you about my guest. Of course, I had Janet last week, and now I have her husband, Dr. Sasha Lessing. He is an anthropologist, has PhD, author of Anunnaki, Gods No More, and producer of the hugely popular website www.Enki, that's ENKIS, what's Enki Speaks, so it's ENKI and SPEAKS.com. He studied with the late Zachariah Stitchin for many years. Mr. Stitchin asked Lessing to create a popular internet book and college level course to revise ancient anthropology. Stitchin asked Dr. Lessing to help disseminate written, graphic, and traditional stories of ETs, and of course considered myths and gods of the earth for 450,000 year BCE, as well as the latest findings of the astronomy that relate to the planet Nibiru, from which the ETs came to Earth for gold to shield their planet Nibiru. So Dr. Lessing is going to be talking about the book and about the Anunnaki. Of course, Janet co-authored Anunnaki Legacy of the Gods and the Anunnaki False Gods with him as well. He has many, many articles everywhere. You can check out his website, which is also a second website besides Enki Speaks, is the Aquarian Radio. Of course, they both have a wonderful show here on, I believe it's every Sunday, or Sunday, I believe. So I'm going to let them tell you more about it. We're going to, just for a second, say hi to Dr. Sasha Lessing, and then we're going to have Janet finish her story that she never got to complete because we got cut off at the end of the show last week. And thank you, folks, so much for joining me.
Thank you. We're so glad to be here. Aloha from Hawaii.
Hello.
Yes, aloha. Thanks for having us, Miesha.
So thank
I
you.
wanted to just say, it's aquarianradio.com.
Okay.
And we do a show on Sunday called Sacred Matrix, which is on Studio B on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, from 8 to 10 Eastern.
Perfect. Thank you for straightening that up. I didn't have that in my notes.
You're most welcome.
So,
did you want Dr. Lessing to say something before I finish up the dragon story?
Why don't he tell us what he's going to be talking about today before you finish up? Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to be talking about how when I was a kid, I was totally mystified by this story about Noah getting all those animals on his boat, and my whole life has been leading up to how I found out through my studies how that happened.
Oh, great. I've always had that question, too. Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so Janet, we left off with you last week. So basically what you did get kind of conned into going to a job that put you in a situation where something happened. So you can go from there.
Okay, I just want to back up 1 second here. It's called, the movie's called Jupiter Ascending, and I hadn't seen it yet. we just started watching it last night, and my internet connection in the jungle here is rather sporadic. But I did get the gist of it, and it ties in with the Anunnaki. It's quite obvious to me that the producer or the director or the author of the screenplay for that movie was familiar with the Anunnaki story of the two brothers and their sister. And what we're finding in our research, and this ties in with my story, is that the Anunnaki have, some of the Anunnaki have their bodies in stasis in the halls of Amenti, and they send threads of their consciousness down into human form, into human incarnations, and they walk among us like they're human beings. And of course, as the heroine in that story, she says, I'm nothing special. In fact, she's a maid cleaning toilets, and that's really ironic because I spent a good portion of my life, not a good portion, but a part of my life as a teenager working as a maid in a hotel. And later on, I did a maid cleaning service like it looks like her mother and she are doing in the movie. So I will continue watching it tonight. I'm on edge as to how it ends, but it's fascinating. Of course, you have Eddie Redmayne, who's just won an Oscar, and he's one of the Anunnaki. I haven't quite figured out which one's Enki and which one's Enlil, but they have a third person, which is obviously Nimba. So anyway, I will report back to you in a future show how that ties in with Janet's story and the Anunnaki.
I did not know that. I did not pick that up in the movie, that's who they're talking about. Of course that's who they're talking about. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
I think that's, I've just watched like the first, I won't give it away in case people want to listen to or watch it. But, just the first part where she's just becoming aware that her mundane reality, which she wakes up every morning and says, I hate my life because she's got to go clean for other people all day. Her mundane life is really, connected to extraterrestrials and beings of higher awareness. And so, anyway, the story's unfolding. I'm not aware of the whole story, but what I see so far was very interesting. What did you think, honey?
I didn't have enough data.
Okay, he's still formulating an opinion. Well, so let me go back to, I got a job on Johnston Atoll, which is a military installation 800 miles southwest of Hawaii. And I was living in Honolulu, Hawaii at the time. And my boyfriend, who was a military brat, but his father was pretty high up, he told me stories of how he used to sit on top of the nuclear, what do they call those? Where the big silos, that's the word I'm looking for, and look down at the huge nuclear warheads that were underground. And his father was very high up and somehow involved with that. So he got a job on Johnston Atoll like he said he would. And I thought he was just breaking up with me and that was an excuse to leave. But so he left, and before I knew it, he promised, I'll get you a job. I'm getting a call, and they interviewed me on the phone. And so I sold everything I owned and put the rest in storage, and I got on board a military transport, and there I am going to this place, Johnston Atoll. I had to get all kinds of physicals and everything because apparently I had clearance. And what I think happened was I was a person of interest. That's why they said yes so easily. So I arrived there, and so there's no bikes, there's no cars on there, just the upper echelon. There's a fire truck. There's a couple, just a dozen vehicles on the whole island. So if you want to get anywhere, you have a bicycle. And I went through all the review to get in there. It was really tough. I thought they would send me back at one point, but finally I'm sitting on a bench, and they said they're going to go get Jason was his name, and so they made Jason aware that I was sitting on the bench. And he was off getting my bike that he had bought for me. It was my surprise. So my very first day of work, I would have a bike instead of having to walk. And this man comes up to me and he says, "Congratulations, you've just landed in a joint U.S. ET military installation." And I said, "Oh, really?" And he started to explain to me, I saw his eyes look above my shoulder, and then I turned around to see what he was looking at, and there was Jason coming up with hit my bike, and he says, "I have to go." I never saw him again. So then I have a kind of relatively normal existence. I'm just wondering about that. I put that in the back of my mind. And a year later, Jason has managed to get himself fired because he's an alcoholic. I had signed a contract, so I was obligated to stay if it was pretty hard to get out of your military contract. I wasn't in the military, I was civilian working for the military, but it was pretty hard to do that. It would put a bad record on your employment record. So I toughed it out. And when Jason left, he said, "Make sure you get a boyfriend. It really wasn't safe for a woman to be single there. It would be a relationship of convenience." And he knew it and I knew it. And so I got a boyfriend. And he was a young man. And they had issued a decree saying if you're married, and it was an open relationship, and I had talked to his wife, and it was okay. But the military issued a decree that said if you're married, you're supposed to be celibate. You're not supposed to be doing anything sexual during your tour of duty. And he was saying, "Oh, really?" Because everybody was having sex with everybody at night. It was like Peyton Place. Wow. It was amazing. Wow. And I know the military could see what was going on, hear what was going on, because during the brief period where I was single, after Jason left, there were all these men clamoring for my attentions, my affections, and this man took me on a tour, and he says, "See that up there?" And he would show me a post. He says, "We can hear everything you're saying on this island. Everything. We can see everything right through the walls. There's no privacy whatsoever." And of course I'm going, "Oh, really?" So when this decree was made, we had gotten together, we were making love, and we looked up at the smoke detector, and we just realized, oh my goodness, they've been watching us. I mean, really watching us. Because, I don't think they would really pay attention to us, because we weren't anything special, so we thought. He was just a private. But there it dawned on us, oh, they're watching us. So within 24 hours of us having that observation and stating it out loud, we were both taken from our beds. We were in a military barracks, so we had separate beds. So I'm in my bed, sound asleep, and suddenly I'm picked up like a surfboard. And there's 6 grays carrying me with 3 military, and these military men are dressed in normal army outfits. They aren't dressed in any kind of special ops outfit. And they're marching beside the 6 grays that are holding me like a surfboard, and I start screaming bloody murder because I've been yanked out of my bed, and I'm in shock, and I'm being carried by extraterrestrials. And what really freaked me out was their fingers. They were just, I had these hands and fingers all over me because they're very long. And there's 4 fingers in one opposing thumb, and they're kind of bulbous on the ends. And I'm looking down, and I realized, I'm caught, I'm captured like an animal. They're carrying me, and I'm screaming. And simultaneously, the gray, it was your normal kind of gray-looking alien. These were the ones that were between 4 and 5 feet tall, and he's talking to me telepathically, and he says, "Go ahead and scream all you want. No one can hear you. You're in an energy field, and soundproof." So I just at that point relaxed, and they took me down to the beach, and then I saw them carrying. His name was Vinny. And he's fighting. He's struggling. He wasn't relaxing at all, and they were having a difficult time with him. But they brought him over to me, and a ship was coming in and landing on the beach. And I just took Vinny's hand, and we both relaxed and realized there's nowhere we could go. We were surrounded. So we just walked calmly on board the ship, which launched out into the, there's an area, if you get an aerial picture of Johnston Atoll, Johnston Island, it's also known as, you can see it looks like an aircraft carrier. And there's a part on the one side that's dark blue, and that's the story is, the official military story is that they dug that out so submarines could get into that facility during World War II, but that's actually where the underground military installation is. So we launched from the beach in a little, kind of a Billy Meyer beam shuttlecraft type. It was a small craft, and underwater, where they put Vinny on the, traditional abductee hard metal table. And there, he's surrounded by 3 different types of extraterrestrials. There's a tall one that was in charge, and it was like a hybrid between the tall gray species and a mantis. It looked like a hybrid. It didn't quite look fully mantis. It didn't look fully gray. It was very tall, about I'd say about 12 feet tall. And then you had a bunch of the ones that were 4 to 5 feet tall, and then you had several of the smaller ones that were like 3 to 4 feet tall. So they're all running around him, scurrying around him, going in and out of the room. And I'm sitting on a military issue, green, hard, cold metal chair, just watching everything and noticing that Vinny was in distress and he was yelling, and then suddenly he grew very silent. And I, in my subconscious, which came back to my conscious mind, because I had a lot of conscious experiences, but I tended to repress them because who do you talk to about this as you're going through life? So all this came rushing back to me, and I said, yeah, they probably, calmed him down, and I had been calmed down. I realized he wasn't getting hurt. He was just freaking out, just like an wild animal that's trapped. So at that point, when I had that realization, I was directed by some of the smaller grays to go to an area which looked like a dressing room. It was off in the corner of this large room, and then it had a little private area. And when I went in there, unplug that, honey. Jason. Sorry, forgot to unplug it. Got it. Okay, so I went over to the corner, and there was a beautiful green gown. It looked like something out of a ball from Henry VIII's time. Mm-hmm. And it had blues and purples, kind of the fabric would change colors as you moved. And it was the most incredible gown I've ever seen. And in the bodice, there were all these gems right into the bodice. Mm. And so I put it on, and it fit me like it had been custom made for me. Mm-hmm. And then there were these shoes that were the most ornate things I've ever seen, and they were extremely beautiful. And I thought, well, these are going to hurt my feet because I have bunions. And a voice assured me, put them on, and they felt just like slippers. They felt like I was walking barefoot. Now, they had a function. I realized later that the dress with all the gems was actually there to help regulate my heart and my body so I wouldn't freak out. And a lot of humans, when they're exposed to such extreme extraterrestrial presence that have a higher energetic field, they talk about the military soldiers, and some of them drop over dead of a heart attack. So they wanted to make sure I wasn't going to go into any kind of defib or distress. And I think it also helped me adjust to not only the energy I was about to encounter, but to perhaps a change in atmosphere. And the shoes were functional as well. I actually was floating. And every step I took, when I started to walk, every step I took, when I moved my leg forward, I would move forward, about 10 normal steps, and then I'd move my other leg, and I was literally floating, and I was following some kind of telepathic direction. But once again wasn't words. I think humans are looking for words. It's impressions and thoughts and an understanding, and I start walking and going down into a cavern from the upper level of the facility, which was all artificial, man-made, or some higher species made the upper facility where Vinny was sitting on the metal table. In fact, the furniture, if there was any furniture in there, it all looked like World War II military issue. It was kind of funny. It was like, why do they have all those ancient furniture in there? But I guess they weren't concerned about aesthetics. They just wanted it to be functional. So then I'm going down into the lower part of this facility. Oh, we have a break already?
Yeah, this tour is going a little longer than. Yeah.
Okay, we'll be back in a few.
Radio at freedomslips.com. And we'll be right back after this message.
Please, anything but sitar music. Yeah, that's better. You're invited to Sacred Cow Barbecue. I'm your host, Patricia Aiken. My guests will free your mind from mainstream manure. No subject is off limits. Don't believe everything you think. It's BS. Just our collective belief system programmed into us. Question everything. Come hungry for truth, because that's what we're serving. Sacred Cow Barbecue, Tuesdays from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern in Studio B.
Let's imagine. If you glimpsed the future, were frightened by what you saw, what would you do with that information? You would go to who? Politicians? Captains of industry? And how would you convince them? Data? Facts? Good luck. The only facts they won't challenge are the ones that keep the wheels greased and the dollars rolling in. But what if there was a way of skipping the middleman, putting the critical news directly into everyone's head? The probability of widespread annihilation kept going up. The only way to stop it was to show it. To scare people straight. Because what reasonable human being wouldn't be galvanized by the potential destruction of everything they've ever known or loved? To save civilization, I would show its collapse. How do you think this vision was received? How do you think people responded to the prospect of imminent doom? They gobbled it up like a chocolate eclair. They didn't fear their demise. They repackaged it. It can be enjoyed as video games, as TV shows, books, movies. The entire world wholeheartedly embraced the apocalypse and sprinted towards it with gleeful abandon. Meanwhile, Earth was crumbling all around you. You've got simultaneous epidemics of obesity and starvation. Explain that one. Bees and butterflies start to disappear. The glaciers melt. Algae blooms all around you. The coal mine canaries are dropping dead, and you won't take the hint. In every moment, there is the possibility of a better future. But you people won't believe it. And because you won't believe it, you won't do what is necessary to make it a reality. So you dwell on this terrible future and you resign yourselves to it. For one reason, because that future doesn't ask anything of you today. Because that future doesn't ask anything of you today. Yes, we saw the iceberg, warned the Titanic. But you will just steer for it anyway, full steam ahead. Why? because you want to sink. You gave up.
Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the planet. Not giving up. Revolution Radio.
Hi, join us on Monday nights for Odyssey at 10 p.m. Eastern Time in Studio B with your host, Michael David. We discuss all types of ancient and modern mysteries, from the Anunnaki to legends and mythology. We often have live guests such as well-known authors and experts on many esoteric topics. Join the intrigue and mystery every Monday night, 10 p.m. Eastern Time in Studio B.
Hey everyone, it's Barbara Jean Lindsay, the Cosmic Oracle. If you have questions about your past lives or future plans, need answers from the cosmos about your love life or career, or just want to keep your finger on the pulse of the planet, check out my show, The Cosmic Oracle, here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com.
The Secret Society Revealed. With your host, Joseph Atwell, author of Caesar's Messiah, The Roman Conspiracy to Invent Jesus, and Shakespeare's Secret Messiah, the groundbreaking discoveries that gives us a new understanding of how governments and elites use mind control to manipulate their subjects. Join Mr. Atwell as he lifts the veils of deceptions of our modern world. Mondays, 12 noon Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific Time on Revolution Radio.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Okay, we will get back to the end of Janet's story. I just want people to know, when you are having a weird experience and it's crazy stuff like she's talking about, gowns and things and balls and all these things, you have to realize that these can be something that really happened to you. That there are, if it didn't happen to you, it's an amazing holographic experience, but yet you have to take a look at it, and because she did, and it's really interesting. Now I know when the guy picked this whole story up, I guess they were attending one of the UFO conventions that she had spoke at. So anyway, Janet, please go on with your story, but we want to make sure that Dr. Lessing gets the full amount of time he needs, so maybe a little less detail, and then I'm going to have you come back, tell the entire story in total detail, and then we are going to dissect the heck out of it. We're going to have other people call in and share their crazy stories. We'll have a show just about those kinds of things. Okay?
That sounds great. I love it. So I'll summarize it. Basically, what happened was these tall beings. They were all tall whites. They were extremely beautiful. They fell in behind me as I was walking down into the lower levels. They were all dressed like they were going to a ball out of the Henry VIII type costumes. No two were alike. They were extremely enhanced, beautiful beings, like enhanced humans. I can't describe it other than that. They were super beautiful, each and every one of them. And so we went downward, and eventually, they were saying, Is she the one? Is she the key? Is today the day? And they were all saying it at once, but it was interesting. It was like all telepathic, and you could hear it all at once, but you could make out what everybody was saying individually. It was a weird phenomenon. I think part of the caution was allowing me to communicate at this level. it's like listening to all the bees in the hive, but understanding what each and every bee is saying. And then we get down to a place where there's a white light that's making a circle in the middle of a dark room. And I go stand there, and as my eyes adjusted to the light, and I stand in this circle, everybody stops speaking, although it's all telepathic. Nobody's moving any of their mouths. And there's a huge obsidian wall I'm standing in front of, and it's obviously different texture than the other walls. It's a magical wall of some kind, and the wall fizzles, dissolves, and I see the legs of a huge being, and we start to crane our necks to see what this being looks like. It's in a cavern on the other side of the wall, which is taller, even taller than the one we're in, and the being seems to take up most of the cavern. And then suddenly the being sends an avatar projection of herself. It was female, and it was a dragon. And so she's standing at the height, like we can look at each other eye to eye, and we look deep into each other's souls. And at that point, the questions, everybody starts asking questions, and we go into this other kind of mode where this information exchange it's kind of like probably what a computer's like. If you got inside and you were able to understand computer, the information is exchanging simultaneously. That part I did not bring back 100%, but I did bring back the impression that it is about these times, and that we're not on the apocalyptic timeline. We're on one that it's going to be a positive outcome, and I have to do a session on that with Dr. Lesson sometime, and I'm waiting for them to say it's time, because I'm going to get some more information. So then they returned me back up. We went back up through the facility in some fashion, which I'm blocking. I don't have that piece. The next piece I remember is I'm being carried like a surfboard and put back in my bed.
Covered?
I don't know.
I don't know how they're carried.
Flat. You're flat on your back. You're flat on your back. Okay, looking up. And then they put me back in my bed, and they use some kind of spray, some kind of energy. I'm frozen. I can't move. My alarm goes off. They literally put me back in my bed like 2 seconds before the alarm went off. And then I had to get up and go to work, and I was angry because they are normally supposed to make you forget, and they did not. And I had to go to work and pretend I was a normal person. And it was really hard to just... I needed that day off, and I couldn't, because you have to be really sick when you call off, or they make you go to the clinic. They make you work. Right. You can never just say, I don't feel well. They make you work. So I had to work. And I compared notes with my boyfriend later, and he said, I thought, I wanted to dismiss it. It was just a dream. I wanted it to be, something that wasn't real and just part of my imagination. And he confirmed, he said, no, you weren't dreaming. That was real. And we were both, there. His perception that he was being interrogated, which he was, he didn't know what happened to me, because for all he knew, I was in another room being interrogated. I was too far away probably for him to see. And then 5 years later, we compared notes again just to make sure, and it was still the same story.
And so he never got to go to the box to take it.
He just had, and there's more to the story, and I don't want to take up the time, but it appeared that they rendered him infernal for like a punishment for having had sex with me.
Oh, I see.
And so that's what the story led to. And he had wanted children, and now he wasn't able to. Okay.
Well, thank you. Now that was very interesting. So I've got more questions about it, but we will definitely hold those questions until you come back, and I'm going to have you see that movie, and then you'll see what I mean about how they took a lot of it. So it would seem to be a positive experience for you, though. Is that right? In a way?
Oh, yes. It felt very... When I have an experience, I look... when I'm sitting there, I always reflect on my experiences, and I allow some time. And before I judge it, I give it to my dream state, and I see how I wake up. If I wake up disturbed, then I further reflect on it and see what was negative for me. I definitely, upon reflecting, feel I feel blessed. I just feel extremely blessed that I could have such an experience. It was very positive for me. It felt like a homecoming, like these people were connected to me on some deep spiritual level. And I didn't detect that they were evil or bad. The dragon wasn't evil or bad. I'm very sensitive to energies. I used to have ghosts at the foot of my bed. Some were, negative, and I would know if it was a negative being. And there were some that were angelic and positive. I always was able to understand the energy that was coming at me. I could feel it. I'm very sensitive that way. Very, very sensitive.
Okay, well, that is a very fascinating story. Thank you very much. And I think it's really interesting that the connection of the Anunnaki to the story as well. So everybody else watch that movie and see what they think. So now we're going to have...
Yeah, this one last thing. I had asked at one point, are these the Anunnaki? And I got the telepathic affirmation, yes, you are amongst the Anunnaki. I was aware that there are other species that are, humanoid and tall, and, like the Pleiadians and, other species, but they confirmed that these were Anunnaki. Okay, next part.
All right, next part. Well, thank you so much. And Dr. Sasha Lesson is our next part of our show, and very exciting part. He's going to be talking about the Anunnaki. Of course, as I stated earlier, he worked with Zachariah Sitchin and for quite a long time and studied with him. So he's going to share some of that with us and kind of start from the beginning. I understand as a child, you had all kinds of questions. So
first of all,
Sasha, do I call you?
Yeah.
Do I call you Sasha?
You can call me Sasha. That's fine.
Okay. All right. Please go on.
Okay. So anyway, the things I wondered about when I was a kid was, wow, did all those different kinds of creatures live within a few miles of where Noah was building the boat? What about the ones that live far away? And how did they get all these? It just seemed the logistics of it just blew my mind. But anyway, I quite forgot that, and I went to study anthropology at UCLA, and I became dissatisfied with anthropology because they weren't finding any missing links that really showed that we evolved from other primates on the planet. There were Indians in South America, and their giant skeletons found all over. The ancient civilizations had all these incredible architectural wonders and engineering feats. Had all kinds of illustrations of flying machines and stuff like that. Anthropology just wasn't dealing with that. So I started working with the prophets conferences, bringing different kinds of consciousness speakers in. And one of the people that they brought in was Zachariah Sitchin. I started taking his courses, and Janet and I did a whole course of study with him, certification course, in studies of what the Sumerians said the big guys that came in rocket ships told them about the world and about everything that came down, including the Noah's flood and what really happened in Noah's flood. And so and I'll tell you at the end of the show just how that ties in. But what the Anunnaki were people from this other planet. This is what they told the Sumerians, the people of this high civilization in Iraq that flowered about some 6,000 years ago or so. They said 450,000 years ago we came from our planet. We came for gold. And we found we made our bases near the Persian Gulf, and we found a whole bunch of gold down in the south of Africa. And the volunteers who were mining mutinied because they were getting terrible work and no glory. So our scientists adapted our genome to the planet Earth by using a few genes from Homo erectus, that's the ancestor of Bigfoot, who was already here. Terraformers had already put Homo erectus here. And Homo erectus called attention because it was an unusual creature. Seemed really psychic, could communicate without speaking, and was empathetic and compassionate. But anyway, basically, the Anunnaki. That's what they call it. Anunnaki means people who landed from the sky, sky people. But anyway, that was these people from Nibiru. Their scientists adapted their genome. And these are great, big, tall, Scandinavian-looking people. They're like 9 to 12 feet high. They adapted their genome to Earth using a few genes from this other creature, Homo erectus, adding clay, adding copper, using their own female medical officers as surrogate mothers for the first batches. They started making clones to be slaves in the mines because their own workers wouldn't do it anymore. And finally, their scientists, the scientific team, developed breedables mine slaves. And that's about 300,000 years ago. That was our first ancestors. And then their chief scientist bred another 100,000 years with a couple of the pretty girls and made a still higher, what they considered a higher form of us as servants or slaves. And it goes on and on. They had they knew the flood was coming. This was an illegal race against what their federation allowed. And their commander, a guy named Enlil or Yahweh, said, let them drown. I forbid anybody from telling them or they'll mob the spaceport. We're going to have to get off. But before that could happen, a representative of the Federation of planets interested in this part of the galaxy, a guy named Galzu, came and said he was representing the king of Nibiru and that the leaders of the Anunnaki, of these Nibiruans, had to stay on Earth. And because if they returned to Nibiru, they would die because they'd been on Earth too long. And then he slipped their scientist a computer program and said, give this to your son, because Enki had the scientist had another son among the hybrids, and this was Noah, and put this in your son's computer bank in the wall of his computer. You don't have to directly tell him, and you won't be disobeying the commander, and so he'll know how to build this this submersible. And so he gave Enki this computer program. Enki said, Zia Sutra, or Noah, I'm not talking to you. I'm just talking to your wall. Here, click this in.
Well, he was forbidden to save the humans.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't enough room on the spacecraft. They knew the flood was coming in, and there wasn't enough room for humans. Plus, Enlil, we're talking about the three siblings, Enki, Nima, and Enlil. Enlil was the commander, and he didn't like humans per se. He thought they were noisy. And when the flood was coming in, he thought it was a great idea, let them be wiped out. They're a nuisance. They're an illegal species. They were created in defiance of the rules of interplanetary conduct. So... Go ahead, back to I was just interjecting that to kind of slow it down a little bit.
Well, it's really a bit more complex than that. There were, by this time there were hundreds of thousands of our ancestors, of the Earthlings, as it were, and there was only at the max 900 of these people from Nibiru, and the person that was starting, it was obvious, making good friends among them, was this prince who was a rival of the king of Nibiru. His name was Marduk, who had made an alliance with the humans, and he had also brought the astronauts that they had on Mars base into the fold, and they had intermarried with, taken brides from among these hybrids. And so the king of Nibiru and the commander on Earth, Enlil or Yahweh, wanted us wiped out because they saw the humans, Earthlings, us, as being potential armies for Marduk, this prince who thought he should still be king of Nibiru, and so that everybody along the line wanted in the Nibiruan hierarchy, except for the three people who had created them, the genetics team of Enki, and Nimma and Ningishita wanted to save them. And it wasn't just that they packed lots of animal starts in the boat. They made diorite chambers where they had all the different kinds of stars deep under the earth, right there in Lebanon. Toth or Ningishita had buried these emerald columns with the history of humanity and how to access the halls of Amenti from inside the pyramids and other sacred structures. So they had saved everything, so the story about Noah. Then, so Noah was building this thing with brought all kinds of artisans in. He was actually the king of Sharupik, which was the medical center. And then the commander came and said, "What are you doing?" And as he was instructed, Noah said, "Hey, we're your brother, your rivals, people. We're building this boat so we can sail down to Africa and get out of your hair, and we just want to be with your brother Enki." And so Enlil, the commander, said, "Good, let him drown in Africa with the rest of these noisy, dangerous creatures. They're too smart for their own britches, but we haven't invented britches yet." But anyway, so he wanted them all to drown. But of course, they had the plans, and also Enki did tell his son, tell Noah, "Listen, your half brother, his name's Ninigal, my youngest son with my official wife, will come and guide your submersible. After so many days, you're going to land on Mount Ararat." So all that came to pass. Everybody drowned except for the leaders got off on their in their spacecraft. Some went to the moon, some went to Mars base, and some of them just orbited around the Earth. And they were really upset about the destruction of the humans. But what happened was that Enlil comes back down to see what the damage was. They have these little helicopter things. And he sees there's Ninigal, Enki's son, and Noah, and the boat, and all these people are cooking and having a good time. And then he sees Enki down there, and so he comes down. They've all come down in their little helicopters, and he says, "I'm going to kill you. You disobeyed me. I'm the commander." But his Enlil's son, Ninurta, was there and restrained his father. And his sister was there, Nimma, and she said, "Hey, look, it's not what you think." Finally, Enki says, "Look, this isn't just a human. This is my son. I did it again. I can't. You know how I am with these women." So, okay, he started getting it. And then his son says, "Hey, we got to breed these creatures and use them, and get out of the business of running everything. We'll use these people that Noah has with him, his sons, Shem, Japheth, and Ham the Dark, and they'll be our kings, and we'll rule through them, and we'll just live a life of luxury in our temples, and they'll worship us."
But besides, they had 30 feet of mud to dig out. Everything was under mud, all their original structure, so they had a lot of rebuilding to do.
So for the next 1,000 years,
let's let Miesha, do you have any questions or feedback or comments?
Well, yeah, I actually have one question. If you just turn off your mic.
Okay, hold on.
Okay, the question I got is the animals. Okay, the story was going so fast now. I'm trying to follow this all, So these were not animals. Was it their DNA? Since he was a doctor, did he just bring in samples of their DNA, or did he bring animals?
They brought both.
Okay.
Most of the DNA was saved in a chamber made of diorite stones underneath the platform in Lebanon, and they also dug some in Sharupik. So they were on the ship itself. They had chickens and goats and sheep and cows and the stuff that they would need in an immediate survival for themselves and their family. They didn't have giraffes. They didn't have rhinoceri. They didn't have elephants. They didn't have those things at all. They had those things were all in the diorite chambers. What they had on the boat was what they would need if they were going to start a life of survivors for themselves.
I see. That makes so much sense.
They had animals out they could be used for food.
And it was animals that were within the vicinity of the boat too, so that even though elephants were very useful animals that they knew all about, they weren't there in Iraq, so they didn't wait and go get elephants from Africa or India. It had to be the animals that they used in their daily lives right there.
Oh.
And they also had plants. They had to replant a lot of the species that were edible. So they had
gone to a lot of trouble through the years to make the kind of things that would make beer and wine and cereal and bread and the stuff that the Anunnaki liked. And so they had bred this stuff, especially
fruit trees.
Yeah, and every kind of fruit tree. So they had that. That's what they brought with them on the boat. But they had everything else because Enki collected it all.
Now that makes a lot more sense for me. Thank you.
Radio at freedomslips.com. And we'll be right back after this message.
Anti-aircraft guns went into action against unidentified aircraft in the Los Angeles area shortly after 3 a.m. Pacific wartime this morning.
We are far stronger than we were 10 weeks ago.
Zero corners, all hands man your battle stations.
You're nervous about your toll. I'll do the mastermind around here.
You who have not seen it do not know what hell looks like from the top.
Bam, check it out every Tuesday and Saturday on Revolution Radio. It's a double dose of the internationally recognized renegade military historian Douglas Dietrich.
You'll stay right where you are until I tell you to move out.
Yeah, that's right. Tuesdays from 10 to midnight Eastern Time. Join Douglas Dietrich as he exposes the truth in hidden history on his show Critical Omissions. And then our human weapon of mass destruction is back once again to take your calls on Saturday Night Firing Lines. Both from 10 to 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Only on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com.
Let's imagine if you glimpsed the future, were frightened by what you saw, what would you do with that information? You would go to who? Politicians? Captains of industry? And how would you convince them? Data? Facts? Good luck. The only facts they won't challenge are the ones that keep the wheels greased and the dollars rolling in. But what if there was a way of skipping the middleman, putting the critical news directly into everyone's head? The probability of widespread annihilation kept going up. The only way to stop it is to show it. To scare people straight. Because what reasonable human being wouldn't be galvanized by the potential destruction of everything they've ever known or loved? To save civilization, I would show its collapse. But How do you think this vision was received? How do you think people responded to the prospect of imminent doom? They gobbled it up like a chocolate eclair. They didn't fear their demise. They repackaged it. It can be enjoyed as video games, as TV shows, books, movies. The entire world wholeheartedly embraced the apocalypse and sprinted towards it with gleeful abandon. Meanwhile, Earth was crumbling all around you. You've got simultaneous epidemics of obesity and starvation. Explain that one. Bees and butterflies start to disappear. The glaciers melt. Algae blooms all around you. The coal mine canaries are dropping dead, and you won't take the hint. In every moment, there is the possibility of a better future, but you people won't believe it. And because you won't believe it, you won't do what is necessary to make it a reality. So you dwell on this terrible future and you resign yourselves to it. For one reason, because that future doesn't ask anything of you today. Because that future doesn't ask anything of you today. Yes, you saw the iceberg, warned the Titanic. But you will just steer for it anyway, full steam ahead. Why? Because you want to sink. You gave up.
Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the planet. Not giving up. Revolution Radio. Radio.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here, Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays, midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hi, and welcome back. I just wanted to remind you that Revolution Radio is completely listener-supported. Go to our donate page. There's seed packets you can get. There's other things you can do to support Revolution Radio, because we need to keep the freedom and the information coming in. And I also wanted to remind you that my guests are Dr. Sasha Lessing. He is an anthropologist, and his website is enkispeaks.com. That's ENKISPEAKS.com. And also, of course, aquarianradio.com is also their site. So it's talking about the Noah and the flood, and I found this very interesting because I always questioned this too. In fact, I used to sit in Sunday school and say, how did they get all those animals in there? I did that, and I got in trouble because I was a minister's daughter.
Yeah, so Noah was just the latest of Enki's creations, and I think we need to really go back to understand who we are now as earthlings, and how we are really all so closely related to each other, and look at the three major interventions when the Anunnaki 300,000 years ago, when they made the first human, that could breed. That was Adamu, or Adam, and the first human who had an enlightenment experience, and her name was Tiamat. And so Tiamat and Adamu were the parents of all, and then these people that worked the mines for 100,000 years in the south of Africa. And as times got worse and the Anunnaki cared less and less for their slaves, many of them wandered off and developed a life in the African bush and their own customs, and it got very close to nature. And of course, the commander started complaining about these slaves ain't working enough and so forth. So Enki decided he knew just the greatest way to up-level humans by giving them more of his genes. And so that's when he made it with these two different girls, and one had a child named Adapa, and the other had a child named Titi, and they are the children. Their children are Cain and Abel, and this ties back into one of the things I was always wondering about is the descendants of Cain, who had been marked by the Anunnaki for the murder of his brother by not having any facial hair, were found in South America way, way before anthropologists, when I was in school, thought of the Indians having come across the Bering Strait and migrating all the way down to the Andes. And so this was another one of these tie-ins. But we need to look at each one of these three incursions. So 300,000 years ago, we get Adamu and Tiamat. They were very bright. They scared the heck out of the commander. Tiamat just spoke right up to him, and it was obvious she's just as bright as any intelligent child from Nibiru. But Adapa, this is the one that he bred in 200,000 years ago, was smarter than everybody, and it was the idea of these geneticists and of Enki too is, look, this creature, Adapa, my son, is so bright, and he's compassionate in a way that my colleagues, the Anunnaki, are not. He is the hope. Let's really capitalize on the education of Adapa and his progeny, and so the children that they really lavished all their attention on were Cain and Abel. They were so important. Yeah, Janet's going to say something.
I wanted to say two things. They wanted to up-level the evolution of consciousness for both the Anunnaki and humanity. And the Anunnaki were kind of reptilian in their nature, and that they were more cold and harsh. And that's what David Icke, he calls them, the Anunnaki reptilians. But I don't think they physically were reptilian, although the reptilian species has their genetic seed within us, apparently, because we have the reptilian part of our brain. Mm-hmm. So they just wanted to advance and become a higher evolved species, which is a natural course of evolution throughout the universe. Yeah. And they saw that this compassion that the human Homo erectus had would be a up-leveling of the Anunnaki by creating a hybrid species. And so the other thing that was a mystery to me was if Adam and Eve had Cain and Abel, who did they have sex with to have children? Were they all mating with Eve again, or were there other people there? So that was an incongruency in the biblical story. I was raised Christian Presbyterian, and there were a lot of these stories that I just shook my head and said, what?
Right. Me too.
So Adapa was so bright, and the king of Nibiru asked, "Bring this brilliant son of person." He supposedly didn't know it was Enki's son yet. To see me, so they brought him in a rocket ship. His brothers, the pure Anunnaki, Thoth, Nigashita was one of them, and Dumuzi flew with him and took him back to the to Nibiru. And on Nibiru, the king of Nibiru reads this tablet from Enki, which says, "Don't give my son, I must confess he is my son, with the long life that we have, because I need him to breed. I need you to send him back here. Don't keep him here." And listen, there's way lots of these creatures, and they're going to be just as smart, and they seem to have an ability to work together in a way that we find difficult. Keep them isolated on Earth. So Enki was part of this conspiracy to keep us short-lived and keep us down on the Earth. And the threat was very, very real. Now, the third descendants that Enki made was, 60,000 years ago. He made Noah with the wife of his overseer, Lumach. And everybody could see, hey, this kid is different.
The overseer was Lumach, and his wife's name
was Batanash.
There's a big cast of characters to pay close attention to. But this child, Noah, was the shining one. When Noah was born, they were accusing Batanash of having slept with one of the Igigi, which are the Anunnaki who came down from Mars. Is that
the astronauts from Mars base.
And she, of course, said, "Oh no, I didn't sleep with one of the astronauts from Mars. She slept with the top god himself, Enki." And so this child, you realize that Enki was the top genius of the entire, both Nibiru and Earth. He was the brightest Anunnaki that ever lived. He was like Tesla.
Okay.
He was the inventor, scientist, so he was brilliant.
Aging geneticist, right?
Right. Enki, the son of Anu, the brother of Enlil, and the husband of Nimma, his sister. And both Nimma bore children to both Enki and Enlil. So they were not monogamous, and also there were so few of them, they needed to interbreed so they would have hybrid vigor. They didn't have enough diversity to be monogamous. They had to mix and mingle, since there was only about 900 or 1,000 of them on Earth. And they weren't breeding as rapidly as humans. They were somewhat sterile or infertile. And so when a child was born to the Anunnaki, he or she was highly celebrated, because it was such a rare occurrence for children to be born to the Anunnaki. They had screwed up their systems, I guess, because of the extreme exposure to radiation. They lived to be millions of years, or hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years old, but even that exposure to radiation had affect their ability to procreate as they once were able to before the wars. They had a series of nuclear wars on their home planet, and all that ties into how they are here on Earth. They're very warlike, and we are naturally more compassionate, but we've been taught to war. We've been used as pawns in their war, pitted one against the other. And another thing they introduced was money, which creates greed and competition and scarcity and so on.
And the fear ultimately that the leadership, Anu and the leadership of the Nibiruns had of Earthlings seemed to grow as time grew, when this disaffected prince, Marduk, Enki's son, who had actually been promised that he would be the next king, and then he got skipped over by Anu, who overthrew the guy he was supposed, Prince Marduk was supposed to succeed. Marduk was moving in on everything. He had made an alliance with the Earthlings. He had married an Earthling. He had been put in charge of Mars base, and the Martian, the Nibiruns on Mars, who came to his wedding, took the initial 200 hybrid women, and they were. It wasn't only that Noah saved his people. The king had ordered that the these people who had been on Mars base, Anunnaki, and then taken Earthling women, be told of the flood so they could go to high ground. And so they warned the Hopi, and they went on. They had, of course, they could fly. They had aircraft, and so they spread out, and they saved a lot of people in other parts of the world as well.
Right. They were forbidden to bring their human wife and their hybrid children onto the spaceship. It was reserved for only pure Anunnaki. So many of the Gigi Anunnaki, the ones who came from Mars, and probably some others, decided to stay behind and make sure that their wives and children were led to safety. And so we do have, originally the Noah story has only one family surviving, but we're getting evidence that other families, there wasn't a ton of them, but other human hybrid Anunnaki families survived.
So after the flood, they used the engineering genius of all the rival Anunnaki cooperated, and they got the humans to help, and they dug out the mud. They made places for the Tigris and Euphrates to fly over. They gave up on this third gigantic river that used to run through Iraq, and it was so covered with mud. It's called the Gehan. But recently, our scientists using ultrasound showed it used to be there, and that's part of the evidence that what the Anunnaki had told to the Sumerians was accurate, even though the evidence was gone and only recoverable with modern equipment. But in any case, for 1,000 years, everybody cooperated. And then the rival, and they celebrating. They made this great big the pyramids down at Giza with a lion on the front of it, and then they put the face of Ningishita, the architect, on that. And so they were really building and building. And then the rivalries came about partly by whose face was on that Sphinx in front of the pyramids. They put.
Let's pause and ask Miesha if do you have any questions or feedback, and we'll do the next part.
No. Keep on going.
Okay. So there's a base on Mars. So they were connected to the Mars base because they would ship the gold to Mars, which had lesser gravity. And when Nibiru came through the inner solar system, and it's what do you call it? It's not an elliptical orbit anymore. We've discovered what's the structure of the orbit, figure 8 type orbit. They would take the gold that they were accumulating, and they had sent in smaller batches, and so they would put it into one big ship and send it to Mars. So Mars base was very important. It was established 450,000 years ago. When you start wrapping your head around the time period of all this and how long we've had advanced, civilizations on all of the Mars, Moon, and probably many other planets in the solar system, it just warps boggles your mind.
Yes.
So, anyway, so the point I was getting at is when Nema first came through to Earth, she landed on Mars, and there was a fellow there named Alalu, and his, what was the guy's name?
Anzu.
Anzu was his pilot, that's what I'm looking for the word. Alalu had died. He was a previous king of Nibiru. There's a whole backstory there we didn't get. But she built the base on Mars as a monument to Alalu and left the first shipment of 20 Anunnaki. They were men, and they created the Mars base, and they created the city Sidonia. So we see the tie with the ancient through the modern, and we're, looking at all the anomalies on all the different planets. So this civilization was established on Mars 450,000 years ago. The face on Mars faces the face on the Sphinx.
On the Sphinx.
They look at each other. Yes. Back to you, Sasha.
Okay, yeah, so there was 1,000 years of cooperation after the flood, and it was celebrated by the pyramid with the face of the architecture on the stone lion. And this set off all this rivalry among these princes, including, and the one who was really upset about it especially was Prince Marduk, who at least his dad had given him Egypt, and now here at the mouth of the Nile there was this Sphinx with his brother, his rival's face on it. And so this set off all these rivals and lots of wars. And now each of the Anunnaki nobles would get a whole bunch of humans and breed them and train them in to be soldiers and fight the humans of the other ones. And these guys are using their laser weapons and their bombs and the biological weapons and all kinds of blinders and things that break people's eardrums on each other and organizing into rival armies. And it gets so Marduk. This is exactly what the Nibiruans were afraid of. Marduk got so powerful that he was about to take over the new spaceport in Sinai, and his son Nabu was coming up through Canaan, and it looked like Yahweh, Enlil, and his forces were going to have to. They built another spaceport on top of the Andes so they could escape. But they said before they leave, let's nuke them. So they dropped atomic bombs on Sodom and Gomorrah, and the cities south of the Salt Sea, which became the Dead Sea. They dropped the bombs on Sinai, which became all bombed out, and then the fallout from these nuclear bombs blew all over Sumer, all over Iraq, and wiped out all the ancient civilizations, except it missed Babylon to the north, and Marduk became ruler of Earth.
And he rules to this day. Go ahead.
Go ahead. It wasn't. If you could turn off your mic. Okay, so Sodom and Gomorrah, the whole thing in the Bible and such, is about the evil and everything like. But what it was two brothers fighting over land, basically, and power.
Evil for them meant that they were on the other guy's side. And all that sin, the sinning cities. The sin wasn't that they had good sex. The sin was that they weren't loyal to Enlil and his clan anymore. And that's the same reason that Jezebel was killed. Her sin, her whoring, didn't mean that she had sex or anything like that. It meant that she allowed a religious tolerance.
And I want to back up a little bit. The nuclear bombs were brought to the Earth by this fellow Alalu, who was the first one to make it through the asteroid belt. He had to use nuclear weapons to blast through to come to the Earth, because in a previous attempt to get to the Earth to harvest the gold to save Nibiru, which was losing its atmosphere from all the nuclear holocaust and destruction, just like we're doing. The Anunnaki, millions of years, had been horrible to their planet, and they were dying because they were losing their atmosphere. Alalu came to the Earth, stole the nukes, blasted through the asteroid belt, and then they were hidden. It's another whole story, but they were hidden for many, many years. There's a big deception story there. But no one remembered, because it had been so many hundreds of thousands years ago, that there was even such a thing as a nuclear bomb, and that it was on the Earth, when they realized that Marduk was going to possibly take over both the Earth and Nibiru, because his forces. How was he getting? It was just a series of fights. He started fighting. I'm sure people are aware of Inanna. They've heard of the goddess Inanna. She wasn't fictitious. She was a real person. She was Marduk's cousin. She was the granddaughter of Enlil. And Inanna got into a fight with Marduk because her beloved Dumuzi had been killed through some kind of accident related to Inanna. So that was part of how the war started. He wasn't
killed by an accident. He was run to death on purpose.
Right, he was run to death on purpose. Okay, it was it was a murder of sorts. So that started the war. But you had one child from the Enlil clan and one child from the Enki clan, and they were warring against each other. But both Inanna and both Marduk started to turn against their, elders. Anu, the great king of Nibiru, who was in charge of everything, and against Enlil and Enki, because they had become so full of themselves, they wanted to rule it all. So the two children that were mostly influenced by the Earth's sphere of influence got very violent, very obsessed with power, greed, and control to the point that they almost wiped out everything. So it was finally voted. Their government was a council of elders, and they voted. And Enki would not vote to nuke his son because that was his son. But everybody else agreed, and they pulled out these weapons, and that was the first time they had used them. That generation had never really been exposed to them. What happened was they forgot that there was such a thing as nuclear fallout, or they would have planned better. So after they nuked, and they didn't know that it would blow in the wind. So after they nuked Sodom and Gomorrah, next thing you know, they're scrambling for their own lives, and some of them, Baal, who was the youngest daughter of Anu himself, died because she didn't get out. She wanted to stay with her
At Lagash.
At Lagash, right? And her body is in a museum in London. And Zechariah Sitchin left millions of dollars.
It's her descendant's body.
It's her descent. Anyway, this is an Anunnaki. Puabi. It's not Baal. Puabi. It's her child or grandchild. We want to have her DNA examined because she's very much Anunnaki. But and Sitchin left millions to have that done, but I don't know what happened. We don't know where that ended up going. Okay, back to you, Sasha.
So after the nuking, most of the Anunnaki went back. Thoth, for example, who had given us the Mayan civilization, had trained people to carry on, and he left in 311 BCE and so forth. Nanar, one of the sons of Yahweh, Enlil, was induced to come back, and he probably became Allah. And in about 1460s BCE or so, starting there, but ultimately it came on later, is Anu abdicated, and the throne of Nibiru went to Nanar, and so Nanar became the king of Nibiru, and he sent his agents to try to destabilize the agents of Marduk. And so Earth has been caught in between Allah and Nanar on the one hand, and Marduk, who plays the role at various times of everybody. Sometimes he says he's Allah, sometimes he says he's Yahweh, and so forth. And so that these two Anunnaki factions have been infiltrating the Illuminati, but basically Marduk has remained in charge until very recently.
Okay, Miesha, do you have any questions or feedback?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would like to. Okay. All right. I want. You need to turn off your mic.
Okay. Hold on. Sorry, I keep forgetting.
Okay. And understanding all of this, I want to make sure that I am understanding this. So now all of these Anunnaki, which particular one has gone now into the Illuminati? Is it the Marduk? Also, I understand that Mars and Marduk, people talk that it's kind of like a same name. Is that because Marduk was basically owned Mars? That was part of his inheritance or something?
Yes, he was.
Go ahead. What's your question, and then I'll turn the mic back on. And so I'll tell Sasha when the mic's back on. Go ahead and finish your question, and when you're done, let me know, and then I'll put the mic back on. Okay, I'm going to mute it.
All right. And so then just go ahead and finish telling me about the Marduk. And then also, so the Anunnaki, are they the same ones that we are seeing? And if you could just give us some visuals here. Okay, you've got lots of names coming in, and I couldn't even begin to say their names. But in the Syrian pictures, hieroglyphics and such as that. There's all kinds of beings. There are ones that look like a dog, can't think of their names now, but a black dog, one that looks like a reptilian, one that looks like a cat, others that have all kinds of different. So you also said, this is a 4-part question. So you also said that the face on Mars and also the face here, I can't think of what it's called, is the same, but it's lion looking. So I kind of lost you on where did the lions come in.
Okay, Sasha's going to talk for a while, and then I'll talk after him.
Initially, after the pyramid was built, and it was to be a beacon to where to turn right to go to Sinai if you're coming in the way they came in, they had a statue which they alluded to in their literature as the stone lion, and it was lined up with when Orion would be in a certain place, showing when Nibiru would then be closest, and they had their reasons for setting it. And then the face started out as the face of a lion. And then Enki, because he wanted to honor the architect who was his son Ningishita, also known as Thoth, said, let's put the face of my son Ningishita, or Thoth, on that stone lion. And so the commander said, okay, yeah. But then way down the line, several thousand years later, there's a war between Thoth, Ningishita is his other name, and Marduk, whose other name is Ra, and Ra wins. Well, what happened is Enki told Ningishita, hey, come on, let's go build Stonehenge and stuff. Let him have Egypt, what the heck. And so it wasn't that, but the war had gone on for 300 years, and as soon as Marduk got control of the area again, where the stone lion that had the face of Ningishita on it, he had it chipped off, and he had his son Asar, or Osiris is his other name. He had Osiris's face put on there. So the last face to be on there was Osiris, and then there were plans to put Gamal Abdul Nasser's face on there, but they never came to anything.
So let me, I lost your series of questions, but let me try to address
about the
that.
types of beings.
Oh, type of beings. Okay, we'll get to that in just a second here. So Marduk became obsessed with being the ruler of everything. Previously, they had started introducing religions onto the earth as a control mechanism. Yahweh was Enlil, and we started to see the creation of Judaism, and then we had Muslim Islam, and then later Christianity. But Marduk said, no, I am all those people that came before, and there's only one God. And so he was wiping out the memory of everybody's work they had done for hundreds of thousands of years and taking credit for it all because he was ruler of the earth. So he is the one behind the religions are now used as control mechanisms and manipulation. You want to say something? Let me just finish it. Remember Orwell's 1984? He had 3 countries that would be constantly warring. Well, it's basically the 3 major religions: Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. They're in a continual war, and that keeps us pitted against each other, not remembering our oneness. And then that's a way that we will never take control over the Illuminati because we're still in this competition and killing each other. So who is the Illuminati? That's probably Marduk's creation, and then we'll get to the modern. Sasha's going to address the beings and the place where all the beings were and the other species that have been interacting with the Earth.
First I'd like to answer your question about the association of Marduk with Mars. Janet has related how Nimma had stopped at Mars and given 20 men from her crew to Anzu to start Mars base. Mm-hmm. Well, Anzu led a revolution of all the astronauts on Mars base. They took over and everybody except Nimrod's son Ninurta shot Anzu down, and then they executed him, and they gave Prince Marduk, the job. You're going to go run Mars base for us and take this guy's body back and hang it in the public square so everybody can see what happens to them if they defy Enlil, the commander. So that Marduk became the associated and became really good pals with everybody up on Mars base, and especially a guy named Shamgaz, who basically became his pal and his partner. And Marduk's kids became really close to Shamgaz's daughters, and they'll later marry them when they come back down to Earth. So there was this alliance, and then Marduk had his wedding where he married an Earthling, and he invited all these guys, they're called the Igigi, the Mars Corps, down for his wedding, and then Nibiru said he could go ahead with the wedding if he left for Egypt immediately, but however, as soon as he left for Egypt, the Igigi and Shamgaz seized 200 of the women, and they took the entire complex of Sumer, and said, "We are in total control now, and we control the Earth. You recognize our weddings and the children we're going to breed. We want a life down here," and they stayed loyal to Mars. And so that's where Marduk's allies have been. That's where he's repeatedly gone to, and he's in charge in Mars too.
Oh, the beings. What did you want to say about the
the Anunnaki look like great, big, strong Norwegian athletes.
But what about the other beings that are on that? Where is that, in South America?
The Anunnaki had contact with lots of other beings, including the reptilians, and in the information that Zecharia Sitchin has chosen to share, or that the Anunnaki conveyed to the Sumerians, they deliberately omitted the fact that there were reptilians with whom they were in contact, with whom they even had some exchanges of warfare with in various places in the earth that they weren't inhabiting. And so that they were definitely in contact with the other races. And in the wall to Pumapuka, just above Tiwanaku, they have a wall where the Anunnaki who ran the place, Adad, one of the sons of Nanar, built a wall, and there was in it faces of all the different extraterrestrial visitors that passed through the Anunnaki spaceport at Tiwanaku and took off on the Nazca Plains. And there's grays, there's little people, there's reptilians, there's the long heads, there's the pear-shaped headed aliens, so that there has been continuous contact of the Earth with various alien species. The Anunnaki did not convey much of this information to the Sumerians, or if they did, it didn't get through until relatively modern times, when Childress and others and Eudes have been talking about the long heads.
Okay.
Now, all of these skyfaring races that we know of practice genetic mutations. When one of our astronauts that was doing the exchange with Serpo died, and they started using his genes to make all kinds of combinations, the other astronauts freaked out. But they said, look at we all do this. We see what we can make, where the combinations make so what human beings, the ones that we are, come from the Anunnaki, who were hybrids made by geneticists just like we were, out of the people that were on Nibiru. And we have reptilian genes, our brain stem, which regulates things automatically, like our temperature and the salt in our body, and is motivated by hierarchy and greed, is there. Fortunately, it's overwritten by a primate brain, which is warm and empathetic, and an intellectual brain which can reason, an intuitive brain on the right side that gets the whole picture, and we have spiritual connections. But we're reptiles too, and we need to come to grips with our own greed and our own hierarchy and just balance those out, so the giving and taking are balanced, and we see the value of all beings, and we don't have to be cock on top of the dung heap.
Yes. I have a question from somebody.
Okay.
I want to know, Marduk is responsible for the creation of the Babylonian money magic and banking. Is that right?
No. This is a system that was initially adopted by Nanar. After Inanna's wars were the champion of Yahweh, Ninurta put him down. They decided that warfare was just so devastating. They kept having to rebuild everything, and finally their leaders said, "Look, my son Nanar, I had suspected him of being behind Anzu's rebellion, but I'm going to give him another chance. He has a scheme. He says we can control people by trade and debt." What a novel! Well, it sounds Michigan, but let's give it a try anyway. And so then when Marduk saw that, hey, this works, then he adopted everything and credit for it. So the Babylonian system of this and that are just him taking credit for running the banks. But nowadays, he still does. He still does, but things have moved on. And Marduk is no longer in charge. He's wants to make amends, and it's a long story. But let's kick it back to Janet for now.
Well, I just wanted to add one little tidbit. When I was a young lady reading Robert Heinlein, he said, "No one owns their DNA, that it belongs to the universe." So when the Serpo crew was going to the planets, the human astronauts were going to the planet Serpo, and they took the gray, they're not really gray, they're kind of a variation on the theme, took the DNA of that person that had died, it just tied right in. And I think Robert Heinlein was trying to tell us something, because he was an insider. He was the first generation of whistleblowers, which used science fiction in order to convey concepts to us about space travel and other beings, and the possible future history of humanity.
Yeah, our abductees all the time talk about genetic experiments they see, and Mark Richards and others that freed the captives under Dulce saw the same thing, that there were all kinds of genetic experiments. The different kinds of centaurs and unicorns, and see, all these so-called mythical beasts were actual genetic experiments that geneticists like Nima Enki and Nagashita are making, and that are the secret. The ones that our military is doing and the Chinese are making are all over in labs all over. These genetic experiments are going on, and Thoth actually instructed a whole group of Mayans who have become a spacefaring civilization. They weren't confined to Earth, and they are in a position in Earth orbit, along with the other species that are trying to save us from ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, that's good news.
Yes, most definitely. Do you have any more questions?
Yes, I do. I just, we only have like 15 minutes, so I want to make sure that when Sasha had talked about the Noah, he said he was going to bring around how it connects. So that is the question, how it connects with us now. I also see in many of the things you've talked about, it's like we're repeating it again. It's coming back around, and the amazing hybrids, the children that are actually being born now, are a perfect example of kind of a repeat of what's going on. It appears, because there is genetics going on with the other species in the hybrid programs.
The past.
Wait, say it again. I didn't have it unmuted. Go ahead.
It's going on now.
The past, the future shall be. The
That's what Enki
past, the
said.
future shall be, is what Enki said.
So how does the Noah flood story tie in
Well,
with today, I guess, with the prediction of the earth changes and the flipping and the warming? Go ahead, explain all that.
I didn't get to the same conclusion that you did.
Go ahead.
Wait a minute,
He lost his
I'm
thought.
a little bit confused. Yeah. Could you
Well,
say
there's
some more?
there's always stories. There's all these stories on the internet now of Planet X Nibiru coming through, and we're going to have the earth changes and the pole shift and everything. And there's a whole bunch of people that I call apocalypsos, and on some level they want the apocalypse to happen so they can be right, and they take pictures and they. And the part of the warping of that is the rapture and the things that were left behind in the Christian and all these other prophecies. They want to hijack the reality and get us behind these negative outcomes, because thoughts are deeds, and our focus and intention on these negative outcomes actually create them. We are co-creators. And our energy needs to go into more positive aspects so we can pull ourselves out from that. Basically, Nibiru, when it comes through, most often does not create any kind of cataclysmic outlooks or outcomes. We have over 450,000 years of history, and there were only a few accounts where there was one time a passing made the Mars atmosphere rip off, but there still is an atmosphere, so that's kind of a story we're looking at. And so that's the tie-in. There was the apocalypse during the flood, which was the greatest devastation we've ever seen. There was another episode during the Exodus from Egypt, where there was some more localized flooding. We once again have a story of people getting wiped out by a flood. That's what happened to the chariots that were in the Red Sea, and that's how Moses got away, etc., etc. Mm-hmm. But it's unlikely that there'll be another apocalyptic episode this time. And also there was another thing that happened, and maybe you want to share that, Sasha.
Yeah, I just have to ask a quick question to make sure that we
go ahead.
Could you share with us, explain a little bit about Nibiru, Sasha?
Okay, was my microphone on, honey?
Yeah, just get closer to it.
Nibiru is a planet that revolves around the binary twin star of our sun. Our sun is called Solaris, and its movement is coordinated with a gravitational bond it has with a dark dwarf star named Nemesis. We know where that is. It shows up on the infrared. NASA doesn't make it public, but the NASA scientist Harrington has confirmed it, and so forth. But in any case, this planet Nibiru goes around Nemesis and swings on through in a huge orbit, which it comes in a certain way every 3,600 years, and it comes through between the path of rotation of Mars and Jupiter. It passes right through there, where the area we call the asteroid belt. And occasionally, when the Earth is in a certain position in its rotation around the Sun, and Nibiru is in a certain rotation, it causes junk things here on Earth, and a lot of disturbance on Nibiru too.
Okay.
Am I still on?
Yeah, we have a caller. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, if I should finish about the
yes.
About the rotation of Nibiru.
Yeah, except that everybody wants to know, what does Nibiru mean in terms of us versus.
It means that right now you can look at the photos from Soho, and you can see, before NASA puts white off on them, that there is two suns. You can see them. People are taking pictures of them. They're coming in particularly from the south. Go to website of Robert Evans Jr. The evidence is overwhelming. Nibiru is here now, but it is not in a place where it can hurt us because it does this figure 8 kind of a rotation, and so this is not one of the times that it's going to cause vast damage. So, but if you like to worry about those things, that's cool. Worry about it, but hell, it ain't going to happen. Just enjoy the show. And the other thing is that this is accompanied by the Galzu have come in and the higher consciousness and said, stop the war between Marduk and Nanar, between Allah and Yahweh, as it were. Stop that, and now everyone is going to be in the general charge of Enki, whose general attitude is creativity, love, and celebration and art. So dig it.
Are you there? Oh, yes, I am, but I guess he left. I guess he didn't have. I thought it was somebody who had a question. So how does this work around with the Noah story again now? Is there any more you want to talk about that, Sasha?
Just that the Noah story, when we look at it in depth, contains the answer to my questions as a child, but also to our modern life. Like the Noah story in depth tells us of diorite chambers and genetic material and the possibility of combining them. So that's inherent in the Noah story when we delve deeply into it. The Noah story gives us information that proves that we are descended from a skyfaring race because they made these maps of Antarctica. This flood was caused when Nibiru came by and the ice sheet slid off of the Antarctic continent into the South Sea and made huge waves coming up the Gulf, the Persian Gulf. And so they made this map of what Antarctica land looks like under the ice. And just recently, our scientists doing ultrasound showed that is exactly right. That's what the Antarctic continent under the ice looks like. And so again, this is a fallout from the deep study of Noah's flood, that the Anunnaki story is indeed true. And it goes on with all the kinds of major things about how there was this big river what is this river? The Bible talks about the Gehan and this, but there's no river there. But the Sumerians said, oh yeah, it got covered up. The Anunnaki told us that the flood brought mud and covered it up, so they just left it covered. And now our scientists with their ultrasound show, hey, look, there was a mile-long wide river, as big as the Mississippi, running right through here, and it was connected by this other river that used to go down by Saudi Arabia. So the various things about the Noah story, when we look at it in the kind of depth that I have been looking at it, confirm that the Anunnaki told us enough of the story of their visitation here and what happened here, that it generates a number of hypotheses. And when we look really deep, we see they're all telling their propaganda too and leaving out the information about the other races and how important they were in the history of this earth too.
Okay.
The other thing also that I find useful is that we know how the Indians got to South America, because when Marduk was closing in on the spaceport, and after the flood too, the Anunnaki kept flying over Indians from Pakistan, from the Indus Valley, and they brought over their supervisors, who were these big, strong black men that ran the Mayan civilization for Ningishita, and they brought over the so-called Indians that didn't have beards, and they weren't people that walked across the Bering Straits to North America. These were people that came over on boats from the Pacific and the Atlantic and in the ships. And we know that the Mayans, Indians, Lord Pikal and others, flew their own spaceships. And we have modern we know from a depth study of Noah's flood that we are one, we are all earthlings, and that we have been treated as slaves. And when the skyfaring races regard us now, we can look them in the face and say, we know who we are, and we demand to be treated with respect. We wish to have the medical knowledge you have and the help that you can give us in cleaning up the planet, and not have all things that you have to share seized by the military and used only for their purposes. And the Anunnaki are responding to our heartfelt cry, and they are sending us Enki or Aquarius, and it's his age now, and we are free when we let ourselves be.
Oh, wonderful. So part of the ascension, so to speak.
Absolutely.
Right.
It all comes around. Well, it's wonderful to see that they've changed their mind and are ready to assist Earth. But, of course, it's always a free will and not until we ask, correct?
That's right, and it's important to really ask, to meditate on the Anunnaki. Just picture some of the Anunnaki that you identify with, and if you do this alone, that's got a certain amount of power. If you do it with other people, it's more power, and if you do it in a sacred place like Serpent Mound or the Great Pyramid, it's even more. And say, help us, listen to us. We need help now!
Yay. All right. Thank you so much for coming to the show. And I wanted to tell you that next week I will have Cecilia Evans, and she will be talking about hybrids and how hybrids are being born.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Enjoy your extra big-ass fries.
You didn't give me no fries. I got an empty box.
Would you like another extra big-ass fries?
I said I didn't get any.
Thank you. Your account has been charged. Your balance is 0. Please come back when you can afford to make a purchase.
No.
I'm sorry you're having
Come
trouble.
on. My kids are starving.
Thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio. Here at Revolution Radio, we believe in freedom of ideas, freedom of speech, but above all, we believe in freedom of existence through self-reliance. This station is 100% listener-supported, and as a fundraising promotion, I have a kick-ass free gift for a $100 donation. 35,000 seeds. 25 years in the freezer. Long-term storable, 54 different varieties. So if food prices go crazy, the shit hits the fan, or if you just want to save tons of money every year by creating your own food like I do, grab our seed pack special. Just look for the banner on the homepage at freedomslips.com. Don't be a statistic. Don't be part of the problem. Be part of the solution. We need, as humans, to start taking care of ourselves and not depending on the megacorps to provide unhealthy, nasty food. Included in this package is also a DVD with 900 survival and off-grid living documents and the offline home canning how to do everything website all on the DVD. So when you're growing all that food, you know how to can it, store it, preserve it, etc. with all these documents. So thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I hope that you will pick up this package and start learning to be free. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps and freedom is one seed that needs to be planted.
What we do in life, it goes in eternity.
Let's imagine. If you glimpsed the future, were frightened by what you saw, what would you do with that information? You would go to who? Politicians? Captains of industry? And how would you convince them? Data? Facts? Good luck. The only facts they won't challenge are the ones that keep the wheels greased and the dollars rolling in. But what if there was a way of skipping the middleman, putting the critical news directly into everyone's head? The probability of widespread annihilation kept going up. The only way to stop it was to show it, to scare people straight. Because what